Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. So I'm feeling really electrified. Actually, it's the day of the full moon in Aquarius, and I've just noticed a lot of activity that's going on here in Australia, and it's actually really, really exciting. I really felt like crying. Actually, just I was overcome by so much emotion. So there's massive protests going on in Sydney at the moment, just as we speak right now. So that's, the full, and I spoke about this, the full moon in Aquarius, it represents the people, right? And so, issues of fairness, justice, equality, sovereignty, humanity, and so forth are basically what these people are standing up for, right? So anyway, there's a lot going on here. There's a little bit of sun today as well, so it's just a little bit more inspiring than what it's been certainly the last couple of weeks with virtually no sun. So what I want to talk about today is the asteroid goddess Ceres, and in fact, what's happening is that she's going to ingress into the sign of Gemini, and it like I've been aware of this for a little while because I always observe the movements of the goddesses as well as everything else. And so I've been reflecting on this internally, trying to connect with what is this going to mean for us, particularly as a collective human family. How is this Ceres in Gemini going to speak to the current paradigm that we are all witnessing? And so it all sort of came together for me this morning whilst I was sitting there, just looking at the chart, looking at Ceres, connecting to Ceres, which is Mother Goddess Earth herself. And, just thinking about a few things about Gemini and a little bit of reading and this and that and the other. And it all just kind of came together for me. And I was just so excited to speak about it. I was going to do an audio. And then I thought, no, bugger it, I'll come on live and I'll just show my face about this, because my face will say a lot about it as well, not just the words that you hear, but certainly the intensity and the expression, of what comes through me, because I'm feeling very intense at the moment, but in a very exciting and hopeful way as well. Particularly because of what I've just seen taking place in Sydney. And a friend of mine just texted me and said they're walking in the city in Melbourne at the moment, and there's there's hundreds of police officers everywhere, so it looks like there's going to be some protesting taking place in Melbourne as well. And I think that's necessary, and I think it's important. It is peaceful protesting, so it's got nothing to do with aggression and violence and and just behavior that would actually end up just being futile. We need to be really smart in the way we approach our own sovereignty as well, right? In the choices that we make, in the behavior that we engage in, and in the message that we want to convey and we want to transmit, right? And this is connecting to Ceres as a matter of fact, okay? So, well, first of all, the asteroid goddess Ceres, who is also known as Demeter, she's a symbol of the earth, Mother Earth goddess, basically. And she's the principle of unconditional love and the principle of nurturance, okay? There's so much to her myth, and if you have not explored her, then, I recommend this book, okay? This is the book you go to if you want to learn about the 4 major asteroids. Demetra George she's the queen of the goddesses. So another book I recommend is this one here, Ceres by Mary Blue. Okay, this was a purchase that I grabbed, I don't know, about a year ago or something like that. And Mary Blue, I believe, is an evolutionary astrologist. So her take on Ceres, the goddess Ceres, and the feminine comes very much from that evolutionary paradigm of astrology, which is fantastic. It's just brilliant. I'm going to read a couple of passages from there anyway, so you'll hear some of it. So here's the thing, and I'm going to unpack this as I go along, but these are the themes that we're going to be looking at with Ceres in Gemini, which happens in a few days' time. And she will also go retrograde in Gemini, go right back into Taurus, and then come back through Gemini and complete her journey. So the ingress happens, I believe, just in a few days' time, which I'll show you the chart in a moment. She will go retrograde, stationary retrograde on the 9th of October. And the other interesting thing about this is that her ingress into Gemini aligns with goddess Lilith, okay, who's also dancing around in Gemini as well this year. A bit of Cancer, I think, later. I think that's towards the end of the year or maybe even early next year. But there is this movement, this energy of the divine, what I like to call the divine feminine, really coming together very, very strongly with Ceres and Lilith. Now, both those symbols are, pure feminine archetypal symbols, and they exist in life and they exist in every single one of us, regardless of our gender, right? The feminine principle and the masculine principle is not about gender. It is about our own inner feminine and masculine, which we all have, right? So she will go stationary retrograde on the 9th of October. She will be forming conjunctions to goddess Lilith, and we'll touch on that as well. And then she will only stationary direct at 27 degrees of Taurus on the 15th of January 2022, and then proceed forward to complete her journey in Gemini. So there's two main takeaways from her journey in Gemini, which I'll unpack in a little bit more detail. But here's the sort of key phrase, if you like, or key themes in terms of what I understand and what I've intuitively really strongly connected with today, especially. So because Gemini corresponds to, I don't want to give a lesson on Gemini, so let's just give a couple of keywords. What's Gemini? Gemini is our left brain, linear mind, our ability to communicate our ideas, our thoughts, our perceptions, how we connect the dots, the seeking of information, knowledge, and so forth. That includes our own, and that includes everything that's out there. So because of the nature of reality at the moment, which is, at real pivotal, critical moments, and it's intensifying day by day, day by day. It's just intensifying. It's like whilst it may seem like Groundhog Day in certain ways, particularly when you're in lockdown and restrictions and all that nonsense, there's this other dimension where we can feel things rapidly moving, right? Things are changing really intensely and in really fast ways. And to me, I can absolutely see what I would actually class as a model of information that's been presented to us right from the start of this global health crisis, where there was very specific intentions in play right from the start, and there was a plan, right, that was going to subsequently unfold based on those intentions. And that includes really high top people in organizations. Like, it really does. Do your homework, do your research. I'm not going to speak too much on those sorts of things because we know we are all being censored and watched and yada yada yada. On the other hand, I'm not directing anyone to anything really, other than just encouraging people to investigate, explore, and use your own critical reasoning skills. As I said in my yesterday's podcast, where I talked about Venus in Virgo, Hygeia in Virgo, which is going to amplify the whole global health situation and certainly our own personal health, and how we actually direct that, how we inquire into that, how we make our own decisions about that. So let me just bring up the chart because that will stimulate visuals. So yeah, just a couple of things. So Ceres, Earth, Mother Goddess, a goddess of agriculture, goddess of the land, of this earth, the sustenance that is this earth that gives us what we need to survive and to live and to breathe and to eat and and replenish and so on and so forth is Ceres. It's all about Ceres. It's Mother Spirit, Mother Earth Goddess. Now, certainly when Ceres is functioning from the dark side, because she does have a dark side, which corresponds to her mythology relative to her daughter Persephone, who was abducted by Pluto. And so Ceres connects to Scorpio and Taurus, Virgo and Cancer. Those are the signs that Demetra George ascribes, we could say rulership, or we could just say ascribes those archetypes as being more closely linked to the characteristics of what describe this particular goddess and why. And just very simply put, the Scorpio Taurus polarity that connects to Ceres is basically about attachment, bondage, loss, rejection, grief, sorrow, and the flip side to that being the transformation, release, letting go, rebirth, and principle of sharing as well. So that's the Taurus Scorpio component of Ceres. And Cancer is the component that speaks to the nurture we receive from birth or not, and the ultimate nurture and self-love that we must integrate into ourselves, regardless of whatever's happened. And the Virgo component speaks to productivity, growth, self-reliance in the work that we do on ourselves, right? So those are the signs that really accentuate or just describe this particular archetype. Okay, so yeah, okay, I'll get to that later. Let's just bring up the chart. So here is the ingress chart of where is she? Ceres into Gemini, which is on the 31st of July, which is literally just days away, right? And you can see there that where's my mouse? There it is. Okay, so there's Ceres in Gemini, and there's Black Moon Lilith in Gemini as well. Okay. So the ingress begins on the 31st of July, and you can see Ceres starts her journey right there, smack bang with Goddess Lilith. I see this as a very significant conjunction, because they will be, dancing around together for the rest of the year, more or less. We know that Lilith has often been projected as the dark shadow of the feminine, but in truth, it's the feminine archetype that is aligned with sovereignty, basically. And so when that archetypal shadow of the feminine is projected, it gets projected in a very distorted way, which is therefore then seen as the dark demonic feminine. But in fact, when you go into the true sort of literature and mythology of these archetypes, you can understand, especially the more integrated and whole we are within ourselves relative to, less projecting of our own stuff, we can come into a more holistic and healthy alignment of our own inner feminine and masculine, and kind of stop projecting that out there, as it were. Okay. And seeing it as the evil person, the dark person, the whatever, right? But Lilith does evoke very raw, visceral, intense components of the feminine that does require a lot of courage to stand in that frequency, because the model that we are used to and have been used to for over 6,000 years is the patriarchal system. And that is, the masculine's here, the feminine's always been suppressed, and then as the feminine gets suppressed, it gets projected and distorted in very ugly sort of ways, right? And so Lilith and Ceres coming together in the sign of Gemini is clearly speaking to sovereignty of speech, our ability to have freedom of speech, to communicate our ideas, to ask the questions that we need to ask, especially at a time like this. That's what these energies are pointing to. And I'll unpack that as we go along. The other theme that's going to come out of this, I feel very strongly, because it's already happening. And so given it's already happening, it's pretty obvious these energies are going to kind of amplify this as well. It will, because Ceres corresponds to loss and grief, and subsequently the experience of renewal, regeneration, and rebirth and transformation. I see that as connecting to media, our ability to communicate freely, and the removal of content and information and the continuous censorship, okay, of information that needs to be out there, because people need to have a choice. They need to be able to think for themselves, to apply critical reasoning skills and think for themselves. And that is largely being taken away. And so people are getting caught up in the what shall I call it? In this illusory projection of Maya, which is this version of reality, getting caught up in the consensus bundle. There's a consensus bundle, and then there's a minority over here who are the people who are more inclined to be creative in their own journey, in their own expressive journey, in their own evolution, in using their own mind, in being able to critically assess and examine and investigate and ask the questions and stand in a sense of sovereignty. So Ceres through Gemini, the other component is going to be, I think, a lot more removal of data and information. On the other hand, a lot more will come out as well. So it'll be a bit of a dual thing, which is, of course, it's going to be dual because it's Gemini, which corresponds to duality. So whilst there'll be this removal, perhaps even more, what's the word? A stronger sense of motivation to try and track everyone and everything that's actually putting information out there. There'll also be this force coming through to humanity at large, where the stimulation of the mind, Gemini, is going to be activated to such a degree where the asking of questions is going to become a lot more pronounced, and rightly so. Because we have been, and we all know this, and I don't want to go on about it, but we're all very aware that we have been misinformed over and over and over again. And it's like there's this program that's being fed and transmitted. And if you step out of that, then you will be, judged, ridiculed, shamed, you'll be blamed. There'll be so many stigmas that go along with that. And so kudos to those that can actually stand in their own sovereignty. And I'm not talking about, this is not about the, how can I put it? It is about responsibility and maturity, right? So it's not about acting like an absolute moron and going around smashing things and whatever. That's just ridiculous. Sorry, but it is. This is about really being able to recognize when you are being fed a program and when you may need to stand in your own sovereignty and sense of your own becoming, and inquire. Inquiry is the healthiest thing in life that we can actually be constantly engaged in, because nothing is fixed and nothing is permanent. And we are always evolving and growing, and inquiry is an absolute necessity in our evolutionary path. And inquiry is the one of the sort of keywords for Gemini. Gemini inquires about everything. That, it's curiosity killed the cat. Gemini is the most curious sign out of the entire zodiac. And so this Ceres in Gemini, and I'm glad she's going retrograde in Gemini, because that means she's going to stay longer in that sign. As I said, she will be in Gemini basically from the end of this month until the middle of January next year. So that's virtually 6 months. So we've got 6 months of this energy really accentuated. And that's a damn good thing. So I just want to just read a couple of comments that are really poignant for what we are looking at, right, with the journey of Ceres in Gemini. Now, what I've discussed so far, it is more pointing to the collective expression of this, but certainly it's going to also speak to our own personal life, okay, relative to where Gemini is in your birth chart, and therefore where Ceres is transiting in your birth chart. Amazing, actually, because for me, Gemini is in my 5th house. So Ceres will be going through my 5th house. And what's the 5th house? It's self-expression. So I love that. Okay. So I'm just going to read a couple of comments and then I'll kind of unpack them as I go along. From the mother spirit, Yang as the male generative creating principle is born as thoughts that propels one's reasoning powers. Now, Gemini is a masculine sign. It's an air sign. It is connected to the left brain. So it's got to do with, as I said, communication, expressing our ideas, our thoughts, and knowledge and information, and networking, connecting, and listening, and asking and inquiring. And according to that paragraph or sentence that I just read, it's identifying that this is a masculine principle. Okay, it's that masculine principle that's always sort of expressed and pushed out. Okay, the internal reference frame, or inner landscape, or inner soul, or inner feelings, emotional body, and so forth. That is always corresponding to water, right? Yin, feminine. So let me just find what I was going to. Okay. So Ceres in Gemini correlates to the archetype of the inquirer. The initial inquirer is the mother spirit, which is Ceres, right? United in oneness to human consciousness as Corey's primal purity. Human consciousness then involutes where it experiences its loss as the soul enters the Plutonian underworld of individuation. The loss of Mother Spirit's consciousness and powers through Ceres in Gemini creates a sense of environmental exclusion and separateness from the Mother Spirit, leading to mental confusion, hyperactivity, uncertainty, and restlessness about one's place and connection to the larger world. That's a very important sentence there, because these are some of the themes that Ceres in Gemini is going to evoke collectively. So at the healthiest, more evolved level, or not even more evolved level, but at a more healthier level, it's going to be the inquiry and the questions that people are going to be asking. People are not going to be satisfied as much with the paradigm before them and the program before them, and what's been coerced and manipulated and mandated and so on and so forth. People are just going to, so many people have already had enough of it, okay? And people are, this is going to stimulate the very pronounced inquiry. But in amongst that, it can also create things like, confusion, hyperactivity, uncertainty, restlessness, and things of that nature as well. Okay. And it will for a lot of people, I'm sure. This confusion, uncertainty, and mental hyperactivity is reflected by tendencies for which Gemini is known, such as fickleness, duplicity, superficiality, feeling mentally scattered and ungrounded, and for being overly talkative or verbose. So I guess, with that, remember that when it comes to Gemini, that stimulates inquiry, okay, and asking questions and learning more and communicating and articulating and expressing and all of that. But I think what we need to kind of remember as well, because we've got Venus in Virgo, Mercury's sign, Hygeia in Virgo, Mercury's sign. That's all fine. That's going to be fine. Mars has just ingressed into Virgo as well. Okay, this is a very intense mutable energy that we're seeing here. So we've got North Node in Gemini, Lilith in Gemini, Ceres in Gemini, Mars, Hygeia and Venus in Virgo, and of course Pallas Athena and Neptune in Pisces. That's strong mutable energy, clearly. And of course South Node in Sag, and Juno in Sag. So the mutable cross is being amplified at the moment. Mutability is wonderful for change, absolutely, and the exploration of the various streams and dimensions that we can explore and learn through, because it enables us to be more fluid and less rigid, less stuck, and less fixed, right? Mutability is so necessary for those reasons. We need that mutable force to come through to enable us to be more fluid in our movement, our thinking, our decisions, our inquiry, and so forth, right? So that's fantastic on that level. The sort of shadow side, if you like, that could also come up through mutable energy, and especially through Gemini, is mental chaos, right? Mental scatteredness, because there's just so much going on, and there is at the moment. We are being bombarded, as I said before. There's just such an intensity of things coming through at the moment, and it does actually, sort of decenter us. It does create that sense of instability and insecurity, but we have to ride that wave, and we have to try to be more fluid and open in our path of inquiry, so that we can actually discover more through inquiry, through research, through investigation, and decide for our own self that we need to do that. But I'm just saying, be aware, because this mutable energy can create a real sense of scatteredness and not feeling like you are able to concretely anchor into any one thing, as it were. As long as you're aware of that, you can put into play certain practices that can bring you back into a grounded, seated space within you. And all that requires is just kind of switching everything off: phones, computers, music, TV, whatever it is you've got going, and just sort of come back to center in absolute stillness. And the mind's it's going to jump around a lot. It's going to come in with so many thoughts ongoing. We have over 50,000 thoughts a day at least, coming and going, coming and going. And so what's some of the teachings in the teachings of non-duality, for instance, or even the teachings of Buddha, reminds us to be the observer, right? We are the observer of what's going on, but through our ego, personality, and sense of separateness, we have so much identity on so many different things that we forget that we are not this, but we are observing through this. So, 10 minutes out, 15 minutes out a day of just sitting still and remembering that you are the observer, and connecting more deeply to your higher self, can bring that sense of calm, particularly when you're feeling quite scattered. Now, it's not always easy, and it doesn't always like if you've got some really serious, intense matters going on in your life, personally and professionally, that kind of process will be a lot more challenging, because everything in your mind is going to want to go to, no, but I've got to do this and I've got to do that, or should I do this or should I do that? So everything's going to distract you. I heard someone say this the other day. I thought it was brilliant. The word distraction, think about it, right? Distraction. What's traction? It's movement. And dis kind of, it sort of puts a stop to that, right? So anyway, in part we need to stop, but in part we also need to be moving as well, if you can kind of understand that, right? The movement needs to be more in fluid movement of observing and being aware, as opposed to just kind of going along into anything and everything because everybody else is doing it. Well, I'm going to do it, that kind of thing, right? We have to think for ourselves. We just have to. Okay, so just a couple more comments. Let me see. There was just one particular passage that it just went bang when I read it. It was incredible. And here it is. The concept of gnosis being a Greek word, meaning knowledge, wisdom, or true knowledge, as a form of nurturance, manifests to tantalize her mentality, meaning Ceres, Mother Earth, wherein circumstances will catalyze the impulse for her need to know the root of true knowledge versus its superficial accumulation and dissemination. And you know what? That's the final takeaway, really, of Ceres in Gemini. This is what it's going to evoke and stimulate. So I'll read it again because it's such a well put sentence. The concept of gnosis, or true knowledge, as a form of nurturance, because nurturance is Ceres, okay, will nurturance manifests to tantalize her mentality, wherein circumstances will catalyze the impulse for her need to know the root of true knowledge versus its superficial accumulation and dissemination. Think about that, right? That's going to be a huge component of what Ceres in Gemini is going to mean, pretty much for the next 6 months. It's actually giving us the gift and the opportunity to sort through the bullshit and get to the truth, because the polarity to Gemini is Sagittarius, which corresponds to truth and natural law. Now, our body speaks through natural law. It responds to natural law. Anything that is alien and false and fake and trying to mimic something that isn't natural to our physiology, biology, all of that, the body's going to have a reaction. The body is the most intelligent piece of equipment because of the brain. So the body knows, always. It always knows. And hence why the body is having, freaky, adverse reactions to these jabs. That's a fact. If you break a bone in your body, typically what happens is, depending on, which part of the body, because you might need some kind of assistance, right, medically. But generally speaking, if you break a bone in your body, it'll take 6 to 8 weeks and it'll just mend on its own. Have you ever had a broken rib? Can a doctor do anything about a broken rib? No. You just basically rest and the bone heals itself. That's how intelligent our bodies are. we we're so busy, with the Zoom focus out there, that we just forget how incredible our own human anatomy is, and how wise our body is, and our brain and our mind and our consciousness, and how healing everything is relative to what the body can do to repair itself, and how it is going to have an adverse reaction to shit that gets put into it that's unnatural to it, unknown. It's pretty logical. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's freaking science, medical science, according to the body, right? So, Ceres in Gemini is going to evoke this desire to ask more questions, inquire more, communicate a lot more, learn a lot more, listen a lot more, and then ultimately separate the absolute nonsense and garbage from the actual truth that will give the ultimate meaning, which is Sagittarius, the polarity, to Gemini. That's basically what Ceres in Gemini is going to do for us. So I'm so excited about this. I feel, I feel so electrified today. It's full moon in Aquarius, and there's just people everywhere and protests, and there's just stuff going on, and it's just very incredibly stimulating. And so I too have to, do some grounding practices. I did a grounding practice before I came on to speak to you guys, because my whole body was just buzzing. I've got a lot of Aquarius energy in me through my chart. So when the moon goes into Aquarius, when we have a full moon in Aquarius, like I literally feel electricity, out through my body. Like I literally feel it. It's so hard to put into words. Um, so, and just finally with goddess Lilith there, that's there's very simply put, you can explore this for hours and hours and hours without question, but very simply put, the two things that can come up out of that is the dark side of lies and information, Gemini. That's a lower personality, lower vibrational split of Gemini that can create things that we call lies. So given that Lilith has this component of the dark feminine, the dark, whatever, this can really stimulate a lot of dark sort of projections again on information and so forth. So nothing will surprise me with what the systems in play have installed, okay, have intended, and are gradually unfolding according to plan, right? It's so obvious. It's so obvious. And our job in this is going to be to tune into Lilith from a position of sovereignty, freedom, justice, to find our own inner truth. That's our responsibility. And if we don't do that, then we will just kind of slide into that program. And that's up to each individual. And I know most of you watching, if not all of you, but most of you are on page with me on this. I know that you are. So I would like you to feel inspired and encouraged through this energy of Ceres and Lilith. There's a lot of power in this. There can be a lot of distortion and lies and manipulation and things like that as well. There can be a lot of removal of data and information, things that would be very helpful to actually humanity at large. So this is going to be our job, to just kind of continue to have the courage to communicate and speak and share the knowledge, the information, not dogmatically, not forcing people. It's not about that. We have to respect people's path, people's choice, and where they are at. We have to do that, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not. But do we have the right to communicate without, being a troll, right? Being a, sort of somebody who puts other people down or things like that. That's just, there's no time for that. We've got no time for that petty bullshit. We are in the process of this magnificent life altering crisis transition in a very fast tracked way, and we've got to get on board. We've really got to get on board and leave the petty bullshit behind and just focus on true mother nature spirit alignment within our truth. No one can take that away from you. It doesn't matter the program out there, but the courage to stand in that is what's required. First of all, recognizing that and understanding that as well. So yeah, I see this journey of Ceres and Black Moon Lilith as a very, very powerful journey for the next 6-7 months. That's going to blow some shit out of the water. It's going to expose and bring a lot of lies into, focus. There's going to be a lot more stuff that you're going to hear, and it's yeah, just you wait and see. Like, mark my words, this is what's going to unfold. But never mind that to a certain degree. Just, if you can, for your own growth and evolution and peace of mind and peaceful heart, stay aligned with your truth and inquire and question everything that's put before you. So much love, much blessings as always. Look forward to seeing you guys very soon again with more. I'm going to come back and talk about Vesta in Libra. As I said, I still want to do that. I think I want to come back and talk about Mars in Virgo as well. Perhaps or perhaps not. I'll just see how I go. I have a bit of work to attend to at the moment. But anyway, either way, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope this was inspirational, because it was meant to be inspirational. It was meant to trigger a message of hope and a message of, don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question that other people are scared to ask. Don't be afraid to communicate, to express your ideas, your right to inquiry, your right to critical reasoning, your right to be in touch with your body and what your body tells you, the intelligence of the brain, these organs in our body that tell us the truth, which are aligned with natural law, Mother Earth, Spirit, Nature. Much love. Thank you.